I thought catching my wife with her lover in MY Beach House would be the worst part of my day. Then I discovered the $47,000 missing from our accounts, the forged documents with my signature, and the judge who was taking bribes from her boyfriend. But when I found out my own mother had been scammed out her life savings, I stopped being the nice guy and started playing by their rules. Some men break when betrayed. Others break the system that betrayed them. Looking back, I should have trusted my gut when Melissa started those mysterious yoga retreats. Should have asked questions when she bought lingerie I never saw. But I was too busy building my fence installation business, too focused on providing for our family. My name is Francis Wolf. I'm 43 years old, and I spent 15 years married to a woman who turned out to be a stranger. We've got an 11-year-old son named Tyler. And until 6 months ago, I thought we had the American dream. Nice house, thriving business, college fund growing. I built fences for a living. Ironic, considering I never saw the one being built around my own life. Betrayal doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It creeps in like rust on metal until the whole structure becomes weak. Melissa had been acting different for months. Distant phone calls, sudden weekend getaways to reconnect with nature, and a new friend named Derek who popped up in every conversation. Derek Mansfield, smooth-talking insurance adjuster with a wife named Patricia and a smile that made my skin crawl. The kind of guy who wore expensive cologne to backyard barbecues. I met him twice at neighborhood gatherings, and both times, something about how he looked at my wife made my blood simmer. The wake-up call came 3 weeks ago when I decided to surprise Melissa at her beach house. I bought that property 2 years back, fixed it up myself, installed every fence and security system with my own hands. It was supposed to be our family retreat. Instead, my wife snuck her so-called friend into the beach house I paid for, thinking she had the perfect hideaway. But what she didn't know was that I was already there with Derek's wife, Patricia. Patricia had called me that week, voice shaking, saying she had something important to show me about her spouses. The pieces had been falling into place for months. Melissa's weekend trips, Derek's convenient business meetings. Even my mother, Ruth, had started making cryptic comments about how Melissa seemed different, though she never said what she suspected. That afternoon, sitting in my own beach house with another man's wife, waiting to confront the two people destroying our families, I realized something had shifted inside me. The Francis who'd spent years avoiding conflict, who'd made excuses for his wife's behavior, that guy was gone. What replaced him was someone harder, more calculating. Someone who understood that nice guys don't just finish last. They get steamrolled by people who mistake kindness for weakness. As I checked my phone, knowing Melissa and Derek would walk through that door any minute, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. The sound of gravel crunching under tires made my stomach tighten. Patricia looked up from her coffee, face pale but determined. We'd been sitting in my beach house living room for 2 hours, going over the evidence she'd brought. Photos of Derek's car, parked behind the dunes. Credit card receipts for romantic dinners I never took my wife to. Text messages that made my jaw hurt from grinding my teeth. "That's them," Patricia whispered, peering through the blinds. "Derek always parks that way," backing in for a quick exit. I watched through the window as my wife climbed out of Derek's silver Lexus, laughing at something he'd said. She was wearing that red sundress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she claimed got ruined in the wash. Apparently, it had just been reserved for special occasions, occasions that didn't include her husband. "Francis, are you ready for this?" Patricia asked, her voice steadier than I felt. "Been ready for months," I replied, though my hands were shaking slightly. I just didn't know what I was getting ready for. Derek grabbed a bottle of wine from the back seat, while Melissa fumbled with what looked like a spare key. My spare key. The one I'd hidden under the fake rock by the front steps for emergencies. Watching her use it to enter my own property with another man felt like swallowing broken glass. They were still laughing when they walked through the front door. Melissa had her arm linked through Derek's, looking more relaxed and happy than I'd seen her in years. The laughter died the second they spotted us, sitting calmly in the living room. Derek recovered first, his insurance adjuster training kicking in. "Francis, what are you doing here?" "It's my house," I said simply, standing up slowly. "Question is, what are you doing here with my wife?" Melissa's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, guilt, then anger. "Francis, this isn't what it looks like." Patricia stood up beside me, crossing her arms. Really, Melissa? Because it looks exactly like what we thought it would look like. Patricia. Derek's voice dropped an octave. What's going on here? What's going on, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, is that you two have been using my beach house as your personal love nest while I've been home working overtime to pay the mortgage on this place. Melissa stepped forward, her face flushing. Francis, you don't understand. Derek and I were just what? I interrupted. Just friends? Just discussing business? Just accidentally spending romantic weekends in my vacation home, while your husband and I were at home like idiots. Derek straightened his shoulders, trying to regain control. Now hold on, Francis. You're jumping to conclusions here. Am I? I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Because Patricia here has been very thorough in documenting your business meetings. The color drained from Derek's face as he saw the photos. Melissa looked between us like a trapped animal, finally realizing that her perfect little secret had been blown wide open. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Long enough, Patricia answered for me. Long enough to gather everything we need for our attorneys. The wine bottle slipped from Derek's grip, shattering on the hardwood floor I'd installed myself. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had been holding us all in place. The silence after the wine bottle shattered felt like the calm before a tornado. Derek and Melissa stood frozen, finally understanding they'd been caught red-handed. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Patricia, why don't you show them what else you found? I said, keeping my voice level. Patricia opened her laptop and turned it toward them. Derek left his email logged in on our home computer. Interesting reading, really. Melissa's face went pale as Patricia scrolled through message after message. Plans for weekend getaways. Discussions about my work schedule. Even jokes about how Francis is too busy with his fences to notice what's happening in his own backyard. You've been planning this for months, I said, stepping closer to my wife. Every detail, every lie. Derek finally found his voice. Francis, we never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, I replied. And now we're going to talk about what happens next. I walked to the kitchen and returned with a manila folder I prepared. See, while you two were playing house in my beach house, I've been busy too. Bank statements, credit card records, even some interesting photos from a private investigator. Melissa's eyes widened. You hired a detective? I'm a businessman, Melissa. When something doesn't add up, I investigate. I opened the folder and spread photos across the coffee table. Restaurant receipts, hotel stays, even some cozy pictures from that wine festival you supposedly went to with your sister. Derek ran his hand through his hair, his smooth composure finally breaking. What do you want, Francis? What I want, I said, my voice hardening, is for you to understand that I'm not the pushover you thought I was. What I want is consequences. Patricia closed her laptop. We're filing for divorce, both of us. But first, we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. Francis, please, Melissa started, but I held up my hand. The Francis who would have listened to your excuses is gone, Melissa. The man standing here now, he's done being taken for a fool. I pulled out my phone and showed them a contact list. Your sister, your parents, Derek's business partners, our son's school. They're all going to hear the truth. Derek stepped forward aggressively. You can't do that. Watch me, I said, not backing down an inch. You destroyed our families. Now you get to live with everyone knowing what you did. The look in Derek's eyes told me he was considering something stupid. Good. Let him try. I'd spent 15 years swinging hammers and digging post holes. I was ready for whatever he thought he could dish out. Derek's hands balled into fists, and I could see him weighing his options. The insurance adjuster was used to smooth talking his way out of problems, but this wasn't a fender bender he could negotiate away. You're making a mistake, Francis, Derek said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife, I replied, crossing my arms. But I'm a quick learner. Melissa stepped between us, panic in her voice. Stop it, both of you. This doesn't have to get ugly. It got ugly the first time you brought him to my house, I said coldly. Now it's just getting honest. Patricia stood up, her own anger finally surfacing. Derek, for once in your life, act like a man and accept responsibility for what you've done. Don't lecture me about being a man. Derek snapped back. Your husband should have paid more attention to his wife instead of playing with his tools all day. That was his second mistake. The first was sleeping with my wife. I stepped forward, and Derek actually took a step back. "Let me explain something to you, Derek," I said, my voice dropping low. "I've spent my whole career dealing with men who think they're tougher than they are. Property owners who think they can intimidate contractors. Clients who think they don't have to pay their bills. You know what I learned?" Derek's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "I learned that respect isn't something you talk your way into. It's something you earn." I pulled out my phone again. "So here's how this is going to work. You're going to sit down, shut up, and listen while I explain the new rules." Melissa tried one more time. "Francis, we can work this out. We can go to counseling." "The time for counseling was before you decided to redecorate my beach house with another man's cologne," I interrupted. "Now we're past talking and into consequences." I scrolled through my phone and found the number I was looking for. "Derek, I hope your insurance license is current, because I'm about to call your regional manager. Turns out, using company time and resources to conduct personal affairs is a violation of your employment contract." "You can't prove that," Derek said, but his voice shook. Patricia smiled grimly. "Actually, we can. Those business dinners you expensed, the ones where you took Melissa to romantic restaurants, all documented." I watched Derek's face as the reality hit him. His job, his reputation, his marriage, all of it was about to come crashing down. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was back in control. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to leave my house, you're going to stay away from my family, and you're going to pray I don't decide to make this worse for you than it already is." Derek looked around the room like a trapped animal, finally understanding that his charm wouldn't get him out of this mess. 2 days after the confrontation, I sat in my truck outside Tyler's school, waiting for him to finish soccer practice. My phone buzzed with another text from Melissa, begging to talk. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. Patricia had texted earlier with news that made my blood boil even more. "Francis, you need to see this," Patricia had written, attaching bank statements I'd never seen before. Now, staring at those statements on my phone screen, I realized Derek and Melissa hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning their future together with my money. Joint account under fake names. Deposits that matched exactly with withdrawals from our family savings. My wife had been systematically draining our accounts for 8 months. I called my lawyer, Jim Richards. He'd handled my business contracts for years, but this was different territory. "Jim, I need to know about financial fraud and marriage cases," I said when he picked up. "Francis, what did you find?" Jim's voice was serious. "My wife's been moving money into accounts I don't have access to. We're talking about Tyler's college fund, our emergency savings, everything." "How much are we talking about?" I did the math again, hoping I made a mistake. $47,000. Maybe more. "Good Lord, Francis. That's felony territory. You need to freeze everything immediately." By the time Tyler came running out of practice, cleats muddy and grinning about scoring 2 goals, I'd already set the wheels in motion. Emergency court filing, asset protection, the works. My son climbed into the truck, chattering about his game, completely unaware that his mother was a thief. "Dad, is Mom coming to my game Saturday?" Tyler asked, buckling his seatbelt. "We'll see, buddy," I said, hating that I had to lie to him. "We'll see." That evening, after Tyler was in bed, I met Patricia at a diner outside town. She looked exhausted, but determined. "Derek's been accessing your accounts somehow," she said, sliding a folder across the table. I found login information on his laptop. I opened the folder and felt my stomach drop. Screenshots of our bank accounts, notes about transfer limits, even copies of Tyler's Social Security card. They hadn't just been planning to steal from me. They'd been preparing to steal from my son's future. "There's more," Patricia said quietly. "I think they were planning to leave the country." She showed me airline confirmation emails, dated for next month. 2 tickets to Mexico, one way. Resort reservations under names I didn't recognize. They were going to disappear, I said, the reality hitting me like a sledgehammer. "With your money," Patricia confirmed, "while you stayed here dealing with the aftermath." I closed the folder and looked Patricia in the eye. "What do you want to do about this?" "I want to destroy them," she said simply. "Completely and utterly destroy them." For the first time since this nightmare started, I smiled. "Then let's get to work." The next morning, my mother called while I was installing a privacy fence for a client in the next town over. Mom never called during work hours unless something was wrong. "Francis, honey, we need to talk," Ruth said, her voice strained. "What's wrong, Mom?" "It's about Melissa." And this whole situation. I stopped what I was doing, hammer frozen mid-swing. What about it? Can you come by the house after work? There's something I need to tell you. The drive to my mother's house felt like the longest hour of my life. Ruth had raised me alone after Dad died, worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She was tough as nails and fiercely protective of family. Whatever she needed to tell me, it wasn't good news. I found her sitting at her kitchen table, looking older than her 68 years. There was an envelope in front of her, opened and obviously read multiple times. "Sit down, Francis," she said without looking up. I sat, dread building in my chest. "Your wife came to see me 3 weeks ago," Ruth began, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said you were having financial troubles. Said you were too proud to ask for help." My blood went cold. Mom, what did she want? She needed money. Said it was for Tyler's school expenses, some special program. $25,000. The room started spinning. "Please tell me you didn't." "I gave it to her," Ruth said, tears starting to flow. "I liquidated my CD, the one I was saving for your college fund when you were little, the one I've been adding to for years." I put my head in my hands. My own mother had been funding my wife's escape plan. "Mom, how could you not tell me?" "She made me promise not to say anything. Said you'd be embarrassed. Said you'd be angry with her for asking." Ruth wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I thought I was helping my family." "Mom, I never asked for money. We weren't having financial problems." Ruth's face went white. "Oh, Francis, what did I do?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "You trusted the wrong person. We both did." Ruth pulled out the envelope and slid it toward me. She gave me this, said it was a promissory note. I wanted to look at it. I opened the envelope and pulled out what looked like an official document. Promissory note for $25,000, signed by Melissa Wolfe. But the signature looked wrong, and the date was from 2 weeks before she'd even asked for the money. "Mom, this is a fake. The signature doesn't match, and look at the date." Ruth studied the document, her contractor's wife experience with paperwork kicking in. "Francis, I think your wife forged this before she even came to see me." The pieces clicked into place. Melissa hadn't just been stealing from our accounts. She'd been planning to steal from my mother, too. The fake promissory note was probably intended to make it look like a legitimate loan if anyone investigated. "Francis, I'm so sorry," Ruth said, breaking down completely. "This isn't your fault, Mom. This is Melissa's fault." I stood up, anger coursing through me like electricity. "But I'm going to make sure she pays for every penny she stole. From both of us." I pulled out my phone and called Jim Richard again. "Jim, it's Francis. We have a bigger problem than I thought. She didn't just steal from me. She stole from my mother, too." 3 days before our emergency court hearing, I got a call that changed everything. Patricia had been digging into Derek's connections, and what she found made my stomach turn. "Francis, you need to know about Judge Henderson," Patricia said over the phone, her voice tight with anger. "What about him?" "He's handling our divorce case. He's Derek's godfather." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Judge Robert Henderson, the man who would decide the fate of my assets, my custody arrangements, and my future, was family to the man who'd been sleeping with my wife. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Birth certificate, baptism records, even family photos from Derek's social media. Henderson has been in Derek's life since birth. There's no way this is coincidental." I sat in my truck outside Tyler's school, watching kids play on the playground while my world shifted again. The legal system I trusted to deliver justice was rigged from the start. "Francis, there's more," Patricia continued. "I found financial records. Derek's been paying for Henderson's grandson's private school tuition, $25,000 a year for the past 3 years. He's been bribing the judge. With your money, essentially. The money he and Melissa stole from your accounts." That evening, I called my lawyer Jim Richards and explained the situation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Jim, you still there?" "Holy cow, Francis. This is huge. If we can prove Henderson knew about the family connection and didn't recuse himself, we're talking about judicial misconduct. Career-ending misconduct. What do? We document everything. Bank transfers, family photos, any communication between Derek and Henderson. Then we file a motion to disqualify Henderson and request a new judge. And if Henderson tries to block it, then we go public. The State Bar Association doesn't take kindly to judges who accept bribes from family members. But I had a different idea forming, one that would require me to step outside my comfort zone entirely. 2 days later, I sat in a coffee shop across from a woman who'd answered my Craigslist ad. Ashley was 28, college-educated, and worked as a professional companion for business events. What she did in her spare time was her business, but I needed her specific skill set for what I had planned. "So let me understand this correctly," Ashley said, stirring her latte. "You want me to approach this judge at a social event and record him talking about your case?" "Something like that. My private investigator found out Henderson frequents the Riverside Country Club every Friday evening. He drinks too much and talks too freely." Ashley nodded thoughtfully. "And you want me to be charming enough to get him talking about his godson Derek and this divorce case?" "Exactly. I need proof that he's biased, that he's been discussing the case outside of court. This is dangerous territory, Francis. If he figures out what's happening, he won't. You're exactly his type. Young, attractive, interested in powerful men. According to my investigator, Henderson has a weakness for female attention." Ashley studied me for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? Why not just report the conflict of interest?" "Because reporting it isn't enough. I need leverage. I need something that guarantees he'll recuse himself and stay out of my life forever. And if I get caught, you won't. You're a professional, and I'm paying you well enough to be very careful." She smiled, a predator recognizing another predator. "All right, Francis. Let's destroy a corrupt judge." Friday evening, I sat in my truck in the Riverside Country Club parking lot, watching Ashley walk into the building. She looked perfect, sophisticated enough to belong, attractive enough to turn heads, and carrying recording equipment disguised as a designer purse. My phone buzzed with updates from Patricia, who was monitoring Derek's movements from her car across town. "Derek just left his office," Patricia texted, "heading toward downtown. Think he's meeting Melissa." "Good," I texted back. "Keep them busy." Ashley had been inside for 40 minutes when my phone vibrated with an incoming call. "Francis, I've got him," Ashley whispered. "He's had 3 whiskeys, and he's talking freely about his godson's divorce case." "Are you recording?" "Every word. He just told me that Derek is a good boy who got caught up with the wrong woman, and that he's going to make sure the settlement favors him." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What else?" "He's bragging about how he's helped Derek's family for years, how he owes Derek's father for some old favor." "Francis, this man is completely corrupt. Stay with him. Get as much as you can." 20 minutes later, Ashley emerged from the country club, walking quickly to her car. She drove to a different parking lot where I met her to review the recording. "Listen to this," Ashley said, playing back audio on her phone. Judge Henderson's voice was slurred but clear. "That wolf fellow thinks he's going to get a fair shake in my courtroom. Doesn't realize I've known Derek since he was in diapers. Boy's like a nephew to me. I'll make sure he doesn't lose everything to some vindictive husband." The recording continued with Henderson detailing how he planned to rule on asset division, custody arrangements, and even alimony payments. Everything was rigged in Derek's favor. "Ashley, this is perfect. He just confessed to judicial bias on tape." "There's more," she said, fast-forwarding the recording. "Listen to this part." Henderson's voice again. "Derek's been helping me with my grandson's education expenses. Good boy, always thinking of family. That's worth something in my book." I leaned back in my seat, hardly believing how thoroughly Henderson had incriminated himself. "Francis, what are you going to do with this?" Ashley asked. "First, I'm going to make copies. Lots of copies. Then I'm going to pay Judge Henderson a visit." "You're going to blackmail a judge?" "I'm going to give a corrupt judge an opportunity to do the right thing for once in his career." The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office with Ashley's recording equipment and a transcript of everything Henderson had said. "Francis, this is incredible evidence, but we need to be careful how we use it," Jim warned. "Blackmailing a judge is a felony." "I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm simply going to inform Judge Henderson that his comments at the country club have been recorded and suggest that he might want to recuse himself from my case to avoid embarrassment. And if he refuses, then the recording goes to the State Bar Association, the local media, and anyone else who might be interested in judicial corruption." Jim shook his head. "Francis, this is playing with fire." "Jim, they've been playing with fire since day one. Derek and Melissa used my own money to bribe the judge who's supposed to decide my fate. Now it's time to even the playing field." I stood up, pocketing the recording device. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to get a clean result. Judge Henderson's chambers felt smaller than I'd expected when I walked in Monday morning with my lawyer Jim Richards and the recording device. Henderson looked up from his paperwork. His face, already showing signs of the stress that came with knowing your corruption was about to be exposed. "Mr. Wolf, this is highly irregular," Henderson began, but I cut him off. "Your Honor, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say before you make any decisions about my case." I placed the digital recorder on his desk and pressed play. Henderson's own voice filled the room, slurred with whiskey but crystal clear in its admission of bias and bribery. The color drained from Henderson's face as he listened to himself confessing to judicial corruption. When the recording ended, the silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Where did you get this?" Henderson asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That doesn't matter," Jim replied. "What matters is that you've been compromised from the beginning of this case." Henderson's hands shook as he reached for his phone. "I need to call my attorney." "You need to recuse yourself from this case immediately," I said firmly. "And you need to make sure Derek and Melissa face the full consequences of their actions." "Mr. Wolf, you don't understand the position you're putting me in." "I understand exactly what position you're in, Your Honor. The same position you put me in when you decided to take bribes from my wife's lover." Jim leaned forward. "Judge Henderson, my client is prepared to keep this recording private if you do the right thing. Recuse yourself, recommend a new judge, and make sure justice is actually served." Henderson stared at the recorder like it was a loaded gun. "And if I refuse? Then this recording goes to the State Bar Association, the FBI, and every news outlet in the state," I said. "Your choice." 3 hours later, Henderson had officially recused himself from my case and recommended Judge Sarah Martinez, known for her no-nonsense approach to divorce proceedings. Derek's free ride was over. That afternoon, Patricia called with more good news. "Francis, Derek just lost his insurance license. The state regulatory board reviewed the evidence of his misuse of company resources and terminated him effective immediately." "What about Melissa?" "She's been served with papers for financial fraud. Jim filed criminal charges this morning." I sat in my truck outside Tyler's school, waiting for him to finish band practice. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The system hadn't failed me. I just had to fight harder to make it work. When Tyler climbed into the truck, tuba case in tow, he looked at me with curious eyes. "Dad, some of the other kids are saying Mom did something bad. Is that true?" I've been dreading this conversation, but Tyler deserved honesty. "Son, your mom made some very poor choices. She hurt our family, and now she has to face the consequences." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" "Yes, buddy. We are." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Will I still get to see her?" "Of course. She's still your mother, and she loves you. But things are going to be different from now on." "Different how?" I thought about how to explain it. "Different like we're going to be stronger. We're going to make better choices. And we're going to make sure people treat us with respect." Tyler smiled slightly. "Like how you always tell me to stand up to bullies." "Exactly like that, son. Sometimes adults have to stand up to bullies too." 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my beach house, watching Tyler and Patricia's daughter Emma build sandcastles while Patricia and I shared coffee and morning conversation. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, like the betrayal had been scrubbed away along with Derek's cologne and Melissa's lies. Judge Martinez had been everything Henderson wasn't: fair, thorough, and completely immune to charm or manipulation. Melissa had received no alimony, minimal custody, and court-ordered restitution for the money she'd stolen from both me and my mother. Derek faced federal charges for the bribes he'd paid Henderson and had lost everything: his job, his marriage, and his reputation. "Francis, you've been quiet this morning," Patricia said, settling into the chair beside me. "Just thinking about how different everything is now." Patricia and I had grown closer over the months of legal battles and shared trauma. What started as an alliance between two betrayed spouses had evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and hard-won trust. "Any regrets?" she asked. I watched Tyler teaching Emma how to reinforce her sandcastle walls with driftwood, the same way I'd taught him to build fence posts. Only that I didn't see it sooner. That I let them get as far as they did. "You trusted your wife. That's not a character flaw, Francis." "Maybe not, but being too trusting nearly cost me everything." Patricia reached over and took my hand. "It didn't, though. You fought back. You protected your family. You made sure justice was served. My mother, Ruth, had moved in with us temporarily, while she rebuilt her retirement savings from the restitution payments. She'd become fast friends with Patricia, and both women had helped Tyler adjust to the new reality of his parents' divorce. "Dad," Tyler called from the beach. "Come show Emma how to make the walls stronger." I walked down to the sand, kneeling beside the kids and their ambitious castle project. "The secret is in the foundation," I told Emma, just like I told Tyler years ago. "If the base is strong, everything else will hold." "Like real houses?" Emma asked. "Like real houses, real families, real lives. Everything needs a strong foundation." Tyler nodded seriously. "Dad says trust has to be earned, not given away." "Your dad's a smart man," Emma replied, then looked up at me. "Will you teach me how to build fences too?" I laughed, remembering how this whole nightmare had started with me being too busy building fences to notice the one being built around my own life. "Sure, Emma. But first, let's finish this castle." That evening, after Tyler had gone to bed and Patricia had taken Emma home, I sat alone on the deck with a beer in my phone. Melissa had sent another text, asking to talk, asking for another chance. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Thank you for today. Tyler and Emma had fun." "So did I." I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for helping me remember what trust feels like." "Same time next weekend," she replied. "Wouldn't miss it." I looked out at the ocean, at the horizon where water met sky, and realized I was finally ready to build something new. Something honest. Something strong enough to last. The old Francis, the one who avoided conflict and made excuses for people who didn't deserve them, was gone. The man sitting on this deck had learned that respect isn't given, it's earned. That trust isn't automatic. It's built through consistent actions over time. And that sometimes, when everything falls apart, it gives you the chance to build something better from the pieces.